He spent 30 years writing love letters for other men until one widow asked, "Will you write one for me?" In New Mexico, there was a man who had never written a love letter for himself, yet he spent more than 30 years writing love letters for everyone else. He wrote for young men who could not string words together, for husbands who did not know how to sound gentle, for people about to leave who could not face their goodbyes. He heard every secret in town but never made a promise to his own heart. Until one day, a 45-year-old widow stepped into the small post office, placed a worn envelope on the counter, and said, "Mr. Turner, could you read me my husband's last letter? And if you can, help me write a letter that is not meant for anyone else, only for myself." The town was called Rosita Wells, the place where red earth met the railroad tracks, where one dusty road led to the church and the other steel road carried folks away. The post office was the place where letters were weighed, news was weighed, and the hearts of those who stayed behind were weighed too. People there were used to the sight of Elias Turner, a tall, slightly thin man with streaks of gray in his hair and a limp in his left leg from an old horse accident. He was about 52, lived alone in the small room behind the post office, and opened the door every morning as faithfully as the sunrise. Folks came to him not only to mail their letters, but to ask him to write them. In Rosita Wells, not everyone could read, and even fewer knew how to use soft words. But everyone had someone far away they missed. So they came to Elias. He sat behind his wooden desk with his old fountain pen, listening, asking about each feeling, each detail, then slowly writing it down. One day a young man scratched his head and said, "Mr. Turner, just write something that makes her know I miss her. I just don't know how to say it right." Elias smiled. "How much do you miss her?" The boy turned red. "Enough that I see her when I try to sleep." Elias nodded, set his pen to paper, and the letter arrived in another town with the words, "I miss you so much that when I close my eyes at night, the only open door I see is the one where you stand waiting." Elias never thought of himself as a poet. He believed he was simply helping people say what they already carried in their hearts. He never envied the letters he wrote, but some nights, when the post office lamps were out, he would sit alone at his desk, look at the sealed envelopes, and think, "Strange. I have sent love all across the land, yet not a single piece of it belongs to me." His wife had died of lung sickness more than 15 years earlier. They had no children, and since then, he had not opened his heart to anyone else. Not because no one came close, but because he had convinced himself that his share of loving had ended long ago. That day was early autumn, the wind carrying the scent of ripening apples from orchards outside town. Elias was sorting new mailbags when the post office door opened. He lifted his head with his usual polite smile. He was used to seeing familiar faces repeat themselves, but the woman who entered made him look twice. She was around 45, broad-shouldered, solid, with warm brown skin and thick black hair pinned at the back. Her face held a mix of strength and weariness, like someone who had walked too long under the sun but had not yet allowed herself to rest. Elias knew who she was. Everyone did. In a small town like this, the name Rosa Martinez traveled with many tales. Some said her husband once worked with a horse-stealing gang down south. Others claimed he was just a drunk who left her alone to tend the orchard. Some whispered she had spent more time alone than with him. But all agreed on one thing. That woman worked harder than most men, and her eyes made many hesitant to come too close. She lived on the edge of town in a small apple house, came into town only to buy salt, flour, and sell baskets of fruit. Today, she walked into the post office carrying a small wooden box. When the door closed behind her, the room fell still. Rosa walked up to the desk, set the box down, and fixed her dark eyes on Elias. "You are Elias Turner?" Her voice was low, rough, with a hint of Spanish from childhood still threading through her English. "Yes," Elias nodded. "I run this post office. Do you need to mail something?" Rosa shook her head and opened the box. Inside was a stack of wrinkled, yellowed envelopes tied with an old string. She slid the box toward him. "I need letters read." Elias raised his eyebrows. "Your letters?" "My husband's letters. He passed 4 months ago." The room grew quiet. Even the sounds outside seemed to fade. Elias looked from the stack of letters back to Rosa. He did not pry. His life had been long enough to know that when someone brought the letters of the dead to a post office, it was not something to question. He only asked the one thing that mattered. "You cannot read them?" Rosa drew a slow breath. "I can read some words. Not enough to understand everything. I found this box hidden in his drawer last week. Some letters are opened, others still sealed. I do not know what he wrote. I do not know if he meant me to see them or hide them." She paused, then added in a quieter voice, "People say you are the best letter writer in town, and that you know how to keep silent." Elias set his hand over the stack. He had written countless letters for others, but this felt different. The handwriting on these envelopes was rough, heavy-handed, belonging to someone unaccustomed to holding a pen. Part of Elias wanted to refuse, to stay away from a dead man's private matters. But another part, the part of him that still knew what grief felt like, told him the woman in front of him needed more than someone who could read words. She needed someone to walk slowly beside her through a room full of memories, so she would not fall alone. He spoke gently. "If you want, I can read them for you, but it must be done slowly, not in a day or two." Rosa nodded. "I am not in a hurry. My husband is not going anywhere to hurry me." Elias pulled out the chair across from him. "Sit. We start with one letter today, the one on top." Rosa sat, her hands clasped tightly to hide their trembling. Elias untied the string, chose the first already opened envelope, and drew out the letter. The paper smelled of age, sweat, and faint tobacco, the scent of a man who lived rough but still took the time to write. Elias unfolded it, laid it flat on the desk, and began to read. Each word like a slow step into the lives of two people he had only known by name. And he had no idea that among the sealed letters in that stack was one not written by Rosa's husband at all, but by Elias himself. A letter he had been asked to write many years ago, back when he was a younger man, for an apple orchard woman who lived on the edge of town. A letter into which he had accidentally placed a small piece of his own heart. But that belonged to another part of the story. That evening, in the small post office, there were only two people and a stack of old letters between them. One reading, one listening. And for the first time in many years, Elias Turner felt he was no longer just the man who wrote other people's love. He was slowly stepping into a story of his own, whether he knew it or not. That afternoon, early autumn sunlight passed through the post office window and fell in long strips across the wooden desk where Rosa's husband's letters lay. Outside, hooves clicked down the road, someone called out from a distance, and the church bell rang softly in the breeze. But inside the small room, all those sounds seemed far away. There was only the slow voice of Elias Turner reading, and the quiet breathing of Rosa Martinez. Elias opened the first letter. The paper was old, edges yellowed, the handwriting shaky and pressed down hard, as if each word had been forced out of a stubborn hand. He cleared his throat, glanced once at Rosa, and read slowly, giving every word a place to land inside her. Rosa, I do not know where to start. Folks say a letter should begin with a greeting, but I figure you have heard enough greetings in your life. I am writing this from a dirty saloon down south, and I am drunk. Drunk, but more clear-headed than most nights. Clear enough that I need to write. Elias paused. Rosa did not move. Her eyes were fixed on the table, dark and unblinking. He continued. I know I am a bad husband. I know I left you with the apple orchard, with the heat and the wind and your good heart, while I chased things that never mattered. I know you deserve a better man, but I am selfish. I wanted you to wait. I write this, not to ask for forgiveness, because I am not sure I know how to live any different. I only want you to know that of all the wrong things I have done, marrying you is the one right thing in my life. Elias lowered the letter. The room was still as a held breath. Rosa's hands were clenched so tightly that the knuckles had turned white. After a moment, she whispered, "Read the rest." Elias nodded and lifted the paper again. I heard someone say when a man dies, he carries no gold with him, only the hurt he caused others. If that is true, I do not know how much of your pain I will have to carry with me. I do not know if you will ever read this. Maybe it gets lost. Maybe you burn it. But I write it anyway, because this is the first time I have ever spoken with my heart instead of with whiskey. I love you, Rosa. I love you the way a clumsy, foolish, guilty man can love. I was never brave enough to say it sober, so I am saying it drunk. Rosa closed her eyes. A thin tear slid out, but she did not wipe it away. Elias read the final line, his voice even slower. If there is a next life, I hope I meet you there. Not in a saloon and not in an orchard, but in some place where I am decent enough to stand beside you. And if that never comes to pass, I thank the Lord that once in my life, I heard you say my name without anger. Elias folded the letter and set it down. He said nothing. He had spent years filling silences for other people with small jokes or gentle comments, but this silence felt like the kindest thing he could offer Rosa. Rosa stayed quiet before finally whispering, "He never said anything like that to me. Not once." Elias answered softly, "Maybe he did not know how. Some people can only speak clearly on paper." Rosa let out a laugh without joy. "He could talk plenty when he was drunk. I just did not have the patience to listen anymore. I thought he had nothing in his head but liquor and horses." She touched the folded letter with her fingertips. Turns out he had more than that. Elias nodded. He did. He just never managed to send those words to the right place at the right time. Rosa looked up. "Mr. Turner, if I take this box home, would you read the rest for me? One at a time, until it is done." Elias thought, then said, "If you trust me, I will keep the box here. Come whenever you are ready. The letters will be safer here, and you will not have to read them alone." Rosa looked around the small room, at its worn walls, its shelves, the chair beneath her. Everything carried years of quiet stories. "I do not trust many people, Mr. Turner." "I know," Elias said with a small smile. "But it seems you trusted me enough to sit and listen to a long letter today." Rosa exhaled, as if a stone rolled off her chest. "Fine. You keep it. Do not let anyone touch it. These letters may not be the whole truth, but they are a part of the life I missed." Elias nodded with the weight of someone accepting a sacred task. He lifted the wooden box and set it on the highest shelf. When he returned, Rosa was still seated. "Do you need anything else?" he asked. Rosa hesitated, then said quietly, "People say you are not only good at reading letters, but writing them for others too." Elias chuckled softly. "I only write what they want to say but cannot name. Words cannot fix everything, but sometimes they keep a heart from choking." Rosa looked at him with a new seriousness. "If I wanted you to write a letter, but not send it to anyone, what then?" Elias blinked. "Not send it to anyone?" "Yes, no envelope, no stamp, no train. It stays in my wooden box, a letter for myself, but I cannot write it alone. I need your help." Elias had never heard a request like that. He had written for lovers, for the grieving, for men leaving town forever. But a letter to oneself was new. He asked softly, "What do you want to say to yourself?" Rosa gave a sad little smile, the kind only hard-lived women understood. "I want to say that I tried, that I am not the harsh woman people think I am, that I loved a bad man the best way I knew how, and now I must learn to love myself, now that no one else is standing beside me." Elias listened, each word falling between them like a small stone. He set a clean sheet of paper on the desk, looked at her. "If I write those words down, will you be able to read them?" Rosa's eyes shimmered, not only with tears. "I do not know. But if I do not start now, I do not think I ever will." Elias nodded. "Then we begin. You speak, I write." He pulled the paper closer, careful as if preparing the most important letter ever written in that post office. At the top of the page, he paused. Who should this letter be addressed to, at least in spirit? Rosa answered in a steady, low voice. "To the woman in the mirror I never dare look at for long." Elias closed his eyes a moment, then wrote, Rosa, if anyone asks how you lived, tell them you made it through dust storms and poor harvests, through laughter behind your back, through long nights waiting for footsteps that never came." His pen moved softly across the page. Rosa listened, hearing words she never believed she could speak aloud. And Elias, as he wrote, realized it had been a very long time since he used his whole heart for a letter. Not a love letter, but a letter meant to save someone from turning against herself. He also did not know that by agreeing to write it, he had taken a small step away from the dry, lonely edges of his own life, towards something he once believed no longer belonged to him. Being needed by someone, not for a stamp or an address, but simply for who he was. In the days that followed, Rosa came to the post office every afternoon, never early, never late. Around 3 o'clock, when the sun slanted through the glass and road dust hung in the air like a pale veil, her shadow would appear on the porch. Elias grew so used to it that he no longer needed a clock to know she was at the door. He heard her steady steps, the steps of someone who had walked through many seasons of wind, then the scrape of a chair as she sat down at the desk without saying a word. It was a strange kind of closeness. They were not friends in the way people usually mean it. They did not trade long stories about the past, did not pour out their pain in dramatic speeches. Yet between them, there was a quiet that felt gentle. The kind of silence that exists between two people who understand that in this small room, no one has to wear armor. Each afternoon, Elias opened another letter. Each one was a piece of the life of a dead man, rough and clumsy, but honest enough to make the chest tighten. There was a letter written from a southern town, drunk, apologizing for losing his wedding ring. One from a ranch job, confessing he was too ashamed to come home and see the disappointment in his wife's eyes. One that held only a single line. "Today I miss you, but I do not dare come back." Rosa listened to it all. She did not cry or wail. Sometimes her hands clenched under the table, as if she were trying to keep her heart from falling to the floor. She did not defend her husband, did not curse him either. She simply faced the truth with the eyes of a woman too used to enduring to waste energy on blame. Elias was different. He read each word as if turning stones in a dry riverbed that had been empty for years. With every letter, he understood more about the woman sitting across from him. She had not lived her marriage on tenderness, but on the stubborn belief that if she worked hard enough, if she waited long enough, someday things might be better. Life does not always reward those who try. One afternoon, when Elias opened the wooden box to find the next letter, he stopped. There was a pale yellow envelope that did not match the others. The paper was thicker, not wrinkled, no bent corners. The handwriting on the front was different too, rounder and smoother, clearly not the hand of Rosa's late husband. It was a hand so familiar that Elias felt the veins in his own hand twitch. He turned it over. No name, no date. Only a faint ink blot at the edge, one he recognized immediately. It was the mark of the old fountain pen he had used more than 20 years ago to write letters for half the town. A chill ran up his spine. Rosa tilted her head. "What is it?" Elias held the envelope carefully, trying not to show how his fingers trembled. "This one is not like the others." "How so?" "The paper is different. The handwriting too." Rosa held out her hand. "Let me see." He passed it to her, his heart pounding as if someone were knocking from inside his chest. Rosa studied the envelope, then said simply, "This is not my husband's." Elias swallowed. "No." "Then whose is it?" The question slipped into a place in his memory he had tried to keep locked. He turned the envelope in his hands, thumb brushing the corner. He knew exactly who had asked him to write that letter. It had happened 23 years earlier, on a cold, early winter evening. A drunk man had staggered into the post office, breath thick with whiskey, asking Elias to write a letter to his former sweetheart. And who was that sweetheart? A young apple grower named Rosa. Back then, Rosa had been around 22. Her future husband was just a wandering horseman, not yet her spouse, not yet the man who would fail her, not yet the silence that would fill her years. "Write for me," the man had slurred. "I want her to know. I will come back. I just need some time." And Elias had written. He wrote with the heart of a man who had just lost his young wife in an accident. Perhaps because he was so hollow inside, he had poured into that letter words he himself had never dared say to another soul. The letter had been long, gentle, warm, almost beautiful. Beautiful enough that he still remembered every line. When he handed it over, the man had skimmed the first part, nodded, then took it away. The next day, Elias heard the gossip. The man had left town again, and Rosa never received a single word in her life. Now that same letter sat in Rosa's hands. She looked up and asked again, "Mr. Elias, who wrote this?" His throat felt dry as dust. His breath snagged halfway in his chest. She narrowed her eyes. "What did you say?" "I think..." Elias drew a long breath. "I think this letter is mine." Rosa did not speak for several seconds. Her face did not change much, but the air in the room did. It grew heavier, thicker, like storm clouds gathering over a ridge. How you wrote it to who? To you. The silence stretched long enough for Elias to hear the ticking of the wall clock. He went on in a lower voice. A drunk man asked me to write for him. He said he wanted to say something kind to you. I wrote what I thought a decent man should say. Rosa held his gaze, her dark eyes unmoving. Why is it here? I do not know, but I am sure of one thing. You never saw it. Rosa set both hands on the table and exhaled slowly. So, I have no idea what you wrote to me. No. Elias bowed his head. You never knew, and that letter, it is not your husband's. Another question came, sharper than the last. Do you remember what you wrote? Elias closed his eyes. He remembered every word, because it was the only letter he had ever written that he never truly let go of. The only one that had carried a piece of his own heart to the very woman now sitting in front of him. Yes, he said. I remember. Then read it, Rosa said. Elias opened the envelope. When he saw the handwriting of the younger man he had once been, his heart twisted. He began to read. His voice was low and slow but steady. Rosa, if there is anyone in this world good enough to make me want to stop wandering, it is you. Rosa's eyes widened in surprise. He read on, each sentence turning over his own life as much as hers. I cannot find the words when I stand in front of you, so I am asking another man to write them down. But no matter how clumsy this heart may be, it only knows how to turn toward you. Rosa pressed a hand against her chest, her breath catching. Elias read the last line, softer than the wind slipping through the door. If someday I become good enough to come back, I hope you will still be there. And if not, I will still be grateful my whole life that once you looked at me with eyes that gentle. When he looked up, Rosa was staring at him with an expression he had not seen in all the days she had been coming. Not anger, not shock, not fear, just a naked truth. Everything she had received in her marriage had never included words like these. Yet another man had spoken them on her behalf, a man who did not sign his own name. Softly, Rosa said, Mr. Turner, a letter that beautiful was not written by my husband. It was written by you. Elias swallowed, and I did not have the courage to tell you that for 23 years. Rosa looked down at the page. So there was a man who once said such things to me. I just never heard them. Her hand shook, but her voice was steadier than any letter in that wooden box. And that man is you. Elias said nothing, but his eyes said everything, like an old parcel finally opened, letting out a light he had kept wrapped up for half a lifetime. Rosa stayed silent for a long time after Elias finished reading. The little post office suddenly felt too small for both of them to breathe in. Elias set the letter down. His hands shook slightly, though he tried to keep his voice steady. I know. I should have told you the truth many years ago. Rosa didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the letter, as if trying to rebuild 20 years of her life using just a few lines of ink. You wrote this letter and let my husband sign it, she said slowly. But the truth is, you wrote what you believed. Elias bowed his head. I wrote it with the heart of a man who realized he had met you far too late. How late? Late enough that the man who asked for help didn't deserve your heart, and the man who wrote the words had no right to give you his. Rosa leaned back, exhaling softly. It wasn't the sigh of someone angry. It was the sigh of someone who had just found the missing piece of a puzzle she'd been trying to understand her whole life. "My husband never said anything like this to me," she admitted. "I know." "And you," she said, looking at him at last. "You've never sent a love letter to anyone, have you?" Elias held her gaze, gentle, honest, steady. "No, I never did, because I didn't want to step into a life that wasn't mine to touch." Rosa didn't answer immediately. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the dusty road and the distant apple trees. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet, but no longer heavy like it had been the first day she entered the post office. "Elias, if I had received that letter back then, I don't know if I would have left anyone. But I do know one thing." She turned and faced him. "I would have looked at you differently." Elias swallowed the words that rose to his lips. He wouldn't dare ask for anything. Not after everything she'd lived through. She had chased a lopsided love for half her life. He would not become a shadow of the past or a replacement for someone buried. But Rosa stepped closer to the desk and sat across from him. "Elias Turner," she said calmly, "you brought a letter from 23 years ago back to me today, and I realize I don't need to know who wrote what when I was young. I only need to know who is sitting in front of me now." Elias blinked, slow, unsure. "And that person," Rosa continued, "is here, clear-minded, steady, honest, not drunk, not running, not hiding. It's just you and me." Something inside Elias loosened, the last dry layer of his life after too many years of drought. He asked softly, "Rosa, do you want me to read the rest of the letters?" Rosa shook her head. "Not today." She placed her hand gently on the wooden box filled with old letters. "Today, I want to talk to you, not to the man who's gone." Elias nodded, and for the first time in many years, the chair beneath him didn't feel empty. Outside the window, the evening wind carried dust and the faint scent of ripening apples. The man who had written letters for an entire town looked at the woman who had never received a single tender word in her life, and understood that some messages don't need stamps or destinations to find the heart they were meant for. In the days that followed, the little post office in Rosita Wells looked the same as ever. The same sunlight falling through the window, the same soft whistle of wind against the old tin roof, the same faint scent of paper that had lived there for decades. But for Elias and Rosa, everything had changed. Not loudly, not suddenly. It changed the quiet way a new breeze finds the one window a lonely house forgot to close. Rosa still came every afternoon, but she no longer sat waiting for Elias to read another letter. Instead, she took the chair by the window, watching him sort mail or pour coffee. Sometimes they spoke only a few words. Ordinary words, simple words. But that simple ease was the first warmth either of them had felt in years. One late afternoon, when Elias handed her a warm cup of coffee, Rosa looked at him and asked, "Do you ever think you might love someone again?" Elias paused. "At my age, I'm not sure love is something I should expect anymore." Rosa smiled, tired but warm. "A heart at 50 beats the same way it did at 20, Elias." The words were simple, but truer than anything he had heard in a long time. Another evening, they walked the dirt road from the post office to the apple orchard. Leaves were falling, drifting slowly across the path. Rosa walked ahead, letting her fingers brush the bare branches. "I've lived here half my life," she said, "but I never told anyone what those years were like." "And now?" Elias asked. "Now, I want to tell someone. Not for pity, just so someone understands." Elias didn't answer. He simply slowed his steps to walk beside her. In that soft silence, his presence said everything. "I'm here. I'm listening. I'm not going anywhere." "Another day," Rosa said quietly. "I've read the letter you wrote 3 times. I know it wasn't meant for me now, only for the woman I used to be. But I'm grateful for it." Elias looked down at his rough, weathered hands. "I wrote it from the heart of a lonely man," he admitted, "but I never believed I'd hear you say thank you." "Well," Rosa murmured, her voice so soft the wind seemed to hold still for it. "Now you have." One winter afternoon, Rosa rose from her chair, ready to leave. 2 unopened letters still sat on the desk. She glanced at the box, then at Elias. "These 2, we'll read another day," she said. "I'm tired today. But Mom, not because of the letters." Elias stepped a little closer. "What is it then?" Rosa hesitated. Then, almost shyly, she said, "Because I'm learning how to get used to someone caring about me." The words weren't loud, but they stopped Elias cold. He wanted to say something gentle, something he'd held inside for years, but all he managed was, "Rosa, I'm here." No confession, no promises, just 3 words. But for a woman who had lived too long inside silence, those 3 words carried the weight of an entire spring thawing an old heart. Rosa reached for the door, but before stepping out, she looked back at Elias once more. No smile, no hiding, just that look, and it was enough for him to understand she had stepped out of her old sorrow, and what she was stepping toward now was him. Spring arrived in Rosita Wells without noise or celebration. Here, spring did not bring parades or fireworks. It simply appeared in the form of warmer winds, the first buds on apple branches, and the sound of footsteps lingering a little longer on the post office porch. One morning, while Elias was sorting mail, he heard a soft knock on the door. He thought it was the delivery boy arriving early, but when he opened it, Rosa stood there with a small basket in her hands. "First apples of the season," she said. "I thought you should be the first to taste them." Elias took the basket, though his eyes remained on her face a moment longer. "You're earlier than usual today." "Yes," Rosa answered quietly, "because I didn't come to hear letters. I came to say something." Elias set the basket on the table, his heart tightening with concern. "What is it?" Rosa stepped closer, not hurried, but with the steady calm of someone who had thought this through for a long time. "I've read the rest of the letters," she said, "and I realized the voice I want to hear now isn't the voice of someone who's gone. It's yours." Elias went still. Rosa continued, "I don't need you to make up for the past. I don't need you to write any more pretty words for me. I only want to know whether the rest of your life has room for someone like me." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he moved closer, close enough to see the lines shaped by years of wind on her skin, close enough to hear the faint tremor in her breath as she stood with her heart uncovered. He spoke slowly, honestly. "Rosa, I spent half my life writing other people's words. If I'm allowed, I want to spend the rest saying the things that are mine." Rosa bit her lip gently, then asked in a soft voice, "So, where do we begin?" Elias gave a small, gentle smile, the kind the town rarely saw on his face. "With a new letter," he said. "This time, I'm not writing for someone else. I'm writing for us." Rosa laughed, a light laugh like the rustle of new leaves on an apple tree in spring. She held out her hand. Elias took it. A simple touch, with no vows and no grand promises, yet more than enough for both of them to know that what they had found was not a replacement for the past, but a beginning of their own. Outside the post office, spring sunlight fell softly onto the red earth. And in that moment, Elias Turner, the man who had spent a lifetime writing letters for everyone else, finally wrote the very first one for his own heart. And the strongest woman he had ever known was the one who read it. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. In a place like Rosita Wells, folks often believe that hearts weathered by many years don't tremble anymore. But the truth is different. A human heart at any age can still find its way back to where it truly belongs. If tonight's story brought someone to mind, or simply reminded you that late love is still real and still beautiful, then I'm grateful you stayed with me. If you'd like to hear more warm, gentle Western tales, please consider subscribing to Wild West Love Stories. So in the evenings to come, we can meet again in stories where the heart never truly grows old. Wishing you a peaceful night.